of this or the short version? So do you prefer the long version or the short version?
Corta.
The little one.
Corta.
Medium. Okay, medium. You get the medium version of this. So there was a script that was sent to me over 10 years ago, and it had the seeds of this movie in it, and it wasn't a situation that I felt I could make it yet. It still needed a lot of work, but there was something quite extraordinary about it. And in fact, the script had been written in the late 80s, which is now 30 years ago, close to 30 years ago. But surprisingly, the issues that this script dealt with, most of the details were exactly the same 10 years ago as they were 25, 30 years ago. So I couldn't get it out of my mind, frankly, and I ended up buying the script and had a very good idea of what to do with the script. But I was having trouble communicating that, and there was a book that came out in New York by a man named Cadillac Man, and it was called The Land of Lost Souls, and it was about his life on the streets of New York. And he had written this with a kind of peasant poetry that was deeply real and deeply emotional, but very dry. It was factual. This is what happened. This is how it happened, without any editorializing. And it was it was exactly what I was trying to communicate when in my own mind to myself of how to make this movie time out of mind. So I, quite by accident, ran into Oren Moverman at an event, and we had known each other before because he had written several scripts that I had admired, and he had written one of my movies, I'm Not There, Todd Haynes' movie. I had co-written that with Todd, so we were friends already. But I mentioned the script to him, and I said, "Look, Oren, you're the guy who should do this rewrite on this. But I know you're way too busy and way too expensive, and you couldn't possibly do this." But he said, "Send me the script anyhow." I sent it to him, and he responded the same way that I did, and we just pretty much dove in. And that was, it wasn't much more than a year ago that we started that process. So this whole thing happened very, very quickly at that time. From the Buddhist tradition, the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, there's a tradition of begging, what we would call begging. But it's a peculiar thing because the motivation is radically different than what normally someone thinks or motivates oneself begging. One normally thinks of a beggar as someone who's really looking for money for themselves, or food for themselves, or enough money to buy booze or drugs or whatever it may be, but it's something for themselves. From a monk's point of view, they're offering the possibility for someone to make an offering and create positive merit, which eventually will build up in the mind stream. Now, I must say that there was a certain mixture of those two things in my own experience there, because I wasn't looking for money, personally. I was an actor out there, and we as filmmakers were making an offering, a possibility, right, to everyone who was in range of that camera to create some positive merit. So from my side, it was radically different than from what someone who's really on the street looking for money and looking for food. And there's no way I would experience that because I don't need the money and I don't need food. So the whole experience is going to be radically different. And I'll never probably be able to be in those shoes. I'm very fortunate that way. For many not obvious reasons of why that is. But they're more, us white people are very much in our little capsules. And especially with the cell phones now, we walk around like this in our little vehicles, that are very hermetically sealed. And all we know is we're going from here, and we know our next spot. And we rarely notice anything between here and there. And I was noticing that on the streets, how sealed off almost everyone is these days, especially, even more so with the machines. The condition of homeless people, there are about 60,000 homeless people in New York right now, and about 20,000 of those are children. huge numbers.